April 29, 1945, Bavaria, Germany, approximately 18 kilometers north of Munich. 17 men stood in a clearing surrounded by pine trees. They were German soldiers. 15 carried rifles. 2 carried nothing. Their uniforms were dusty and worn. Several had removed their helmets. One man held a white cloth tied to a stick. It hung limply in the still air. Across the clearing, 40 meters distant, a line of American infantry had taken position behind fallen logs and a low stone wall. Rifles were aimed. A .30 caliber machine gun was mounted on a bipod, its barrel trained on the group. No one spoke, no one moved. The white cloth remained visible but had not been raised. It was 13:47 hours. The German soldiers had emerged from the tree line 6 minutes earlier. They had walked slowly into the clearing with their hands visible. They had stopped when the American squad leader shouted. They had not advanced further. They had not dropped their weapons. The white cloth had been prepared but not displayed. For 6 minutes, both groups had remained motionless. The man holding the stick shifted his grip. He did not raise it. The American unit was a rifle squad from Company G, 3rd Battalion, 188th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division. They had been operating in the area since April 27, clearing scattered resistance as German units fragmented and withdrew. The squad consisted of 12 men. They had occupied the stone wall position at 13:20 hours after advancing through a series of abandoned farm buildings. The terrain was mixed forest and open ground. The clearing measured approximately 80 meters across. Visibility was good. The temperature was moderate. There had been no combat in this immediate area since the previous day, though artillery fire could be heard to the east. The squad had encountered 4 German prisoners that morning, all unarmed, who had surrendered without incident. The German group had been observed by the squad's assistant squad leader at 13:38 hours. They had been moving through the forest in a loose formation. The assistant squad leader had reported their approach to the squad leader, who had ordered the squad to take defensive positions and wait. Radio contact with the platoon headquarters had confirmed standing orders: accept surrenders when offered, but maintain defensive posture until weapons were discarded. At 13:41 hours, the German soldiers had entered the clearing. The squad leader had called out in English for them to halt and drop their weapons. The group had stopped. Several men had looked at each other. No weapons had been dropped. One man had produced the white cloth, but had not raised it. The assistant squad leader had repeated the command in broken German. There had been no response. The German soldiers appeared to be from different units. Their insignia were not uniform. Ages range from approximately 20 to 45. 3 men showed visible signs of injury: bandaged hands, a limp, blood-stained trousers. Their weapons were standard carabiner 98K rifles. No heavy weapons were visible. No packs or equipment were carried. United States Army doctrine in April 1945 was clear regarding the acceptance of surrenders. Enemy personnel wishing to surrender were required to disarm themselves completely, display a white flag or cloth, and approach with hands visible and raised. Failure to comply with these requirements was treated as a potential ruse or delaying tactic. Infantry units were authorized to fire on armed enemy personnel who failed to disarm, regardless of apparent intent. The squad had been briefed on these procedures during training in the United States, and again before deployment. The briefing had been reinforced in March 1945 after incidents in which German soldiers feigning surrender had opened fire on American troops. Company commanders had been explicit: no risks were to be taken. Surrendering personnel were to be covered at all times. Any suspicious movement was to be met with immediate fire. The squad leader had participated in combat operations since the invasion of southern France in August 1944. He had accepted surrenders on 7 previous occasions. In each case, the surrendering personnel had discarded their weapons before approaching. He had been present when another squad had taken fire from German soldiers who had approached with raised hands and then produced concealed weapons. That incident had occurred in February. 3 Americans had been wounded. The machine gunner had his finger on the trigger. The assistant gunner had a belt of ammunition ready. The safety was off. The squad leader had not given an order to fire, but he had not ordered the squad to stand down. The riflemen maintained their aim. Several had already selected individual targets. Standard practice was to fire on command or upon any hostile action. The German soldiers had not dropped their rifles. They had not raised the white cloth. They had not advanced. They had not withdrawn. They remained standing in the clearing, visible and vulnerable. 6 minutes had passed since they entered the clearing. That was longer than any previous surrender the squad had witnessed. At 13:47 hours and 30 seconds, one of the German soldiers began to lower his rifle. The squad leader raised his hand slightly, but did not speak. The German soldier stopped. The rifle remained in his hands. He did not drop it. He did not raise it. He held it at waist level and looked at the man beside him. The man with the white cloth took a half step forward. The machine gunner's finger tightened on the trigger. A voice spoke. The words were in English, quiet, from somewhere behind the stone wall. Hold. The machine gunner did not fire. The squad leader did not turn to identify the speaker. The German soldier with the rifle remained motionless. The man with the white cloth did not take another step. No further words were spoken. At 13:48 hours, the squad leader glanced to his left without moving his head. The assistant squad leader was positioned 3 meters away, his rifle aimed at the center of the German group. He did not look at the squad leader. His expression was neutral. He did not repeat the command. At 13:49 hours, one of the riflemen shifted his weight. The movement was slight. He adjusted his grip on his M1 rifle, but did not change his aim. Another rifleman blinked several times in succession, then resumed his focus on the target. At 13:50 hours, the man with the white cloth lowered the stick slightly. He did not drop it. He held it at his side, the cloth touching the ground. He said something in German, too quiet to be understood. None of the other German soldiers responded. At 13:51 hours, the squad leader wet his lips, but did not speak. He had not issued an order since 13:41 hours. The standing order to fire on armed enemy personnel who refused to disarm remained in effect. He had not countermanded it. He had not confirmed it. His hand remained slightly raised. At 13:52 hours, the assistant squad leader lowered his rifle 2 inches, then raised it again to the original position. The movement appeared unconscious. He did not look at the squad leader. At 13:53 hours, one of the German soldiers coughed. The sound was sharp in the silence. Several American riflemen flinched but did not fire. The German soldier who had coughed turned his head to the side and spat. He did not move otherwise. At 13:54 hours, the machine gunner's finger remained on the trigger. His breathing was steady. He had not received an order to fire. He had not received an order to stand down. The barrel of the machine gun had not moved since 13:41 hours. The clearing remained silent except for distant artillery and the sound of wind in the pine trees. The voice that had said, "Hold" belonged to the squad's second rifleman, a private first class from Ohio. He had been with the unit since January 1945. He had participated in combat operations in the Vosges Mountains and during the crossing of the Rhine. He had not previously spoken out of turn during an engagement. He was not the ranking member of the squad. He had no command authority. His position was at the right end of the line, behind the stone wall. From that angle, he had a clear view of the faces of the German soldiers. At 13:47 hours, he had observed that two of the men in the group were not holding their rifles in a ready position. The weapons were slung over their shoulders. The men's hands were at their sides. One of them was looking at the ground rather than at the American position. The private first class had also observed that the man with the white cloth had moved it from his right hand to his left hand at approximately 13:46 hours. The movement had been slow and deliberate. The cloth had been held at chest level before being lowered. The private first class interpreted this as an attempt to signal intent without making a sudden movement that could be perceived as hostile. He had not called out his observations. He had not requested permission to speak. The word "hold" had been spoken reflexively, in response to the visible tension in the machine gunner's posture. The private first class had served as an assistant machine gunner in a different squad before being reassigned. He recognized the signs of imminent fire. The squad leader had heard the word. He had not identified the speaker immediately, but he had understood the word as a request for delay rather than a challenge to his command. He had not countermanded it because he had not yet given the order to fire. The standing order authorized fire, but did not require it. The decision to fire remained at his discretion. The squad leader had been evaluating whether the German group's failure to disarm constituted hostile action or confusion. The presence of the white cloth suggested intent to surrender. The retention of weapons suggested hesitation or incomplete commitment. The lack of movement suggested neither aggression nor retreat. The squad leader had been weighing the risk of allowing additional time against the risk of initiating fire on personnel who might be attempting to comply. The word "hold" had provided a reason to extend the wait without appearing indecisive. At 13:56 hours, one of the German soldiers unslung his rifle and placed it on the ground. He stepped back from it and raised his hands. The man beside him did the same. A third soldier followed. Within 20 seconds, all 15 rifles had been placed on the ground. The soldiers stepped away from the weapons and raised their hands. The man with the white cloth raised the stick above his head. He held it steady. The cloth moved slightly in the wind. The squad leader stood and called out in English. He directed the German soldiers to walk forward slowly, with their hands raised. He instructed his squad to maintain their positions and cover the approach. The machine gunner kept the weapon trained on the group, but moved his finger outside the trigger guard. The German soldiers advanced in a loose line. They moved slowly. Their hands remained raised. They did not speak. When they reached a point 10 meters from the stone wall, the squad leader ordered them to stop and kneel. They complied. The assistant squad leader and 2 riflemen moved forward to search them. No weapons were found. No concealed items of military value were discovered. At 14:02 hours, the prisoners were directed to sit on the ground. The squad leader used the radio to report the surrender to the platoon headquarters. He requested instructions for the transfer of prisoners. The platoon leader acknowledged and stated that a detail would arrive within 30 minutes. The squad maintained security around the prisoners. No conversation occurred between the Americans and the Germans. The prisoners sat quietly. Several removed canteens and drank water. One man closed his eyes. Another stared at the tree line. At 14:28 hours, a 3-man detail arrived from the platoon headquarters. The prisoners were directed to stand and move to the road. They complied without resistance. The detail escorted them east toward the battalion collection point. The squad leader resumed normal patrol operations. The squad moved out at 14:35 hours. No official report mentioned the 12-minute delay in the clearing. The squad leader's after-action summary, submitted to the company commander on April 30, recorded the acceptance of 17 prisoners at 1400 hours on April 29. The summary noted that the prisoners had surrendered without resistance. No further details were provided. The platoon leader's daily report listed the same information. The battalion operations log recorded the receipt of 17 prisoners from Company G at 1520 hours on April 29. No unusual circumstances were noted. The prisoners were processed according to standard procedures and transferred to a division holding area on April 30. No interrogation reports from that group have been located in archived records. The private first class who had spoken did not mention the incident in letters home. He did not discuss it with other members of the squad. The squad leader did not acknowledge the interruption or ask who had spoken. The machine gunner later stated in a 1987 interview that he remembered the surrender, but did not recall any specific details about the sequence of events. He confirmed that no shots were fired. The assistant squad leader was killed in action on May 2, 1945, during an engagement near the town of Holzkirchen. His personal effects included a diary with entries dated through May 1. The entry for April 29 mentioned accepting prisoners, but provided no additional information. The squad leader was discharged in November 1945. He returned to Pennsylvania. He did not maintain contact with other members of the squad. He did not participate in reunions or veteran organization activities. He died in 1979. His service records contain no commendations related to the events of April 29, 1945. The private first class who had spoken remained in Germany as part of the occupation force until March 1946. He was assigned to a military police unit in Frankfurt. He returned to Ohio in April 1946 and resumed work in a tool manufacturing plant. He married in 1948 and raised 3 children. He did not speak about the war in detail with his family. In 1983, He was contacted by a local newspaper preparing an article on veterans of the 45th Infantry Division. He agreed to a brief interview. When asked about his most significant memory of the war, he mentioned the surrender in the clearing. He stated that he had been uncertain whether speaking out had been appropriate, but that the squad leader had not reprimanded him. He did not elaborate. The article quoted one sentence from his account. The full interview notes were not preserved. The machine gunner returned to Illinois in December 1945. He worked as a mechanic and later owned a small garage. He attended a unit reunion in 1962, but did not encounter any other members of his rifle squad. In the 1987 interview, conducted for an oral history project at a state university, he was asked whether he had ever hesitated to follow an order. He stated that he had always followed orders, but that there had been times when orders were delayed or unclear. He did not connect this statement to any specific incident. Of the 17 German prisoners, no individual identification has been recovered from available records. The division holding area processed more than 2,000 prisoners during the final week of April 1945. Records from that period are incomplete. No post-war inquiries or correspondence related to the group have been found. The squad leader's widow, interviewed in 1995 for a book on the 45th Infantry Division, stated that her husband had rarely discussed combat experiences. She recalled that he had once mentioned accepting a large group of prisoners near the end of the war, but had provided no details. She did not remember the date or location. 17 men walked into a clearing. 15 carried rifles. They did not drop them. They did not raise a white flag. They stood in the open for 12 minutes while 12 Americans aimed rifles and a machine gun at them. At 13:47 hours, one soldier began to lower his rifle. The machine gunner's finger was on the trigger. A voice said one word. The machine gunner did not fire. The soldier did not drop his rifle. No one moved. 3 minutes later, the rifles were placed on the ground. Hands were raised. The group walked forward and knelt. They were searched, secured, and escorted away. The squad continued its patrol. The incident was recorded as a routine surrender. No shots were fired. No inquiry was conducted. No commendation was issued. The voice was not identified in any official record. The word was not repeated. The 12 minutes left no physical evidence. The clearing was empty by 14:35 hours. The war in Europe ended 9 days later.